So the customer had these delivered, and these are about 6,000 pounds. So they need to be moved because the slab's going to go right here between these two buildings. So this slab is going to come past this shed 10 feet. So all this right here has to be taken down. Plus, I like to usually leave about 10 feet on the outside. So pretty much this whole pile right here just needs to get moved over. I left it rough like this last time with all these logs. That's what the customer wanted. So now that I'm doing the slab, I'll move everything over. And this pitches this way just a little bit. So I'm going to end up having to take some of this dirt, push it over this way. And you want to make sure that there's no sod underneath of this. I pretty much scraped all the sod off already when I was doing the land clearing, but I definitely want to make sure I got all of it. I don't want any organic debris under this at all. So this slab is a 24 by 48. So it's going to be 48 long, 24 feet wide. So the customer wants it to be centered between these two buildings, and we also line these buildings up perfectly with a string to make sure that they are both perpendicular with each other. So if you look down, you can see that they line up. So the slab needs to be, if we take a string line from here to there, the slab needs to be on that string line. That's the start of it. And so between these buildings, if you center that at 48 feet, you have about 9 feet on each side. So that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that there's even space between the corner, which is about like right here. So it'll start right here and go about 9 feet from that building. And that's this constant line right here. That's the line that doesn't change. So then from there, we'll square up the rest of it. So 24 feet from there over to there, and then 48 feet from there to there, and 24 feet back. So it's gonna, this building right here is 14 feet, so it's gonna stick 10 feet beyond it. So now to get started, I'm just gonna take the spray paint, make some lines, some rough lines, and I'm just gonna see what I need to clear out of here and just do that first. And then I'll see how level it is, see how much I need to take off, and I'll take it one step at a time, and I'll show you guys each time I do that. So we're doing a 3, 4, 5. So you want to do variables of 3, 4, and 5. So over there we're doing the 3, which is 3 times 5 is 15, and this is 5 times 4 is 20, and then so this last one will be 5 times 5, so that's 25. So right where they intersect is where the square mark is. So 25 and 20. All right, so this corner is a little bit easier. Once you get the other 3 corners squared up, this one's simply a matter of measuring 48 feet, 24 feet, and wherever they intersect, that's the corner. So what I'm doing right now is just for excavation purposes. This really doesn't have anything to do with the final product. I'm just trying to get a line of where I need to excavate, and then I'll put batter boards up to do the more precise work. So at the beginning of the day, I'll tune it into that and calibrate it. And then that way I know exactly where I need to be. So now I'm going to set this on the under slab height. So that's DS for dig for slab. So that's counting for 6 inches slab plus 4 inches of crushed stone, number 2. So it's really important that when you're compacting, you really need some water, especially before you even put the gravel on. This stuff is so dusty, it really doesn't do a lot to compact it. Plus, you're getting all kinds of stuff in the filters, the air filter of the machine. So you definitely want to wet things down, and wetting it down helps a lot with compaction. I mean, there's no better compaction than nature with water. I mean, it takes a long time, but if you do water and vibratory compaction, then it's a lot better. It's just a way to speed it up, but nature will naturally take care of this over time, but we can't wait that long. So this is a 275 gallon tote, and I just got a little 12-volt pump on it, and that's all you need. This thing's got plenty of pressure, got plenty of volume. And there was a waterfall on the property that I was going to get the water from, but right now it's kind of dry, so it's completely dried up. So I just have to keep transporting it. This thing weighs a lot when you got the water in it. But I mean, I put it a third. I filled it a third of the way, and that's probably all we need for today. So we might have to rip some of these roots out and replace it with just some gravel. I don't want any organic material underneath this slab at all. It's unfortunate because you end up taking a lot of dirt out. That's kind of good, but you really just can't have this stuff underneath of it. All right, so I'm gonna let them tamp this a little bit more. I'm gonna go get some gravel, and we're gonna start putting some gravel in both the footings and the under slab today. Precast company. You got to kind of drive through their lot here just to get to the gravel. just over in that corner. Just maybe put a couple scoops. So that's good? I just want to get the center. All right, let's just check it now. We'll just go from the other side and it should be the same measurement. 32'9". So this triangle goes 15 feet from that corner to there, and from that corner to here is 20. So this should be 25 feet. $25. That's perfectly square. That's good. Make a mark.
I'm not level here. It's above that anyway. Okay.
It don't really matter though,
On
because
three?
you can still screw it to it.
Good there. Make sure that thing's kind of level too.
Gotta go.
Secure it. What?
Do you want it tan?
No. Yesterday when I first got here, there was a line all the way out to the road and all the way up to here, which is like a quarter-mile long, all with 10-wheelers. I was the only 6-wheeler that was there. Right there is going to be the shower in the corner, and then there's going to be a small wall, and then a vanity, and then there's going to be a toilet, and then behind the toilet I put a vent because there's going to be a wall right there, so it'll go up through the wall. So then here is the kitchen sink that goes into it. So kitchen sink, 1.5 inches. This vent I left at 2 inches, even though technically the code with a toilet, if you're just venting a toilet, you can get away with 1.5 inches, but I always put 2 inch, that way you can just adapt down 1.5 inches if you need to. So anyways, there's a toilet. There'll be a toilet flange coming out of there. And then this is going to be for the vanity sink, and it's going to continue up on the wall for a vent for the shower and the vanity. So again, I could have got away with an 1.5 inch vent coming up here, but I always put 2 inch just in case. So then over here, there's a trap. So underneath this slab, you have to have a trap for the shower. That's that's probably one of the hardest things that you need to do. Other than that, it's not too bad. So, and you can never come into a pipe that's horizontal with just a T, even though you see it a lot. You're never supposed to have those T's on their backs like that. They're always supposed to be vertical. So you always want to come in with a Y. So then I just capped it off out here, and this is ready to go. And then that way they can just take it from here, go right into the tank. Probably convert it from right here to 4-inch and put a clean out right here as well, and adapt it to 4-inch, and then go 4-inch from there out. Schedule 40 PVC to the tank, and then from the tank to the D box, you can get away with SDR 35. So what we did here is, after you set this up, you run a string line down 1.5 inches away from here. So that way, when you're lining things up, you don't want that line to be right on this corner, because then if one spot is sticking this way, it's going to hold the whole line out and you won't even know it. So the best thing to do is to take it and put it 1.5 inches away, and then when you're lining it up, you just take a 2x and you just go like this and check it. And you go over here and you check it. See? And you can see if you move it out the slightest little bit, it holds the rest of it out. So you don't want to put the string line right where it needs to be. You always want to put it away from it. So a couple other things I want to mention. When we're putting in the plastic, what we're going to do is just go right underneath. The plastic's going to go down and up, and that way, see all these spaces here? All the spaces in these boards, they don't matter, because you're running this vapor barrier up and around, and that way this little spot right here will be covered with the vapor barrier, so nothing will get out of there. So I always like to set these boards on the bottom, tap them in a little bit, and then I can run up to the top, and that way you can actually put a lot of force on these. You can walk on them and it won't affect anything. If you just have stakes in the ground and you try to put any weight on it, you'll end up driving the stake into the ground. So that's no good. So right now, I can just jump on this, and this is sturdy. I could walk this no problem. Now, I probably don't really need to walk it, but I always set them up like this just in case. Whenever I'm doing a monolithic pour, it's usually at least 12 inches around the outside for height. This happens to be 18 inches on this one for some reason. That's what the building inspector called for, but normally they're just 12 inches. But there's a lot of force on the bottom when you're doing these. So another pro tip I can give to you is on the bottom. We haven't done it here yet, but we will. You just take gravel and put it on the first 4 inches of the bottom. So a lot of guys will set up these forms and they'll either bow them in a little bit and then wait for the concrete, and then when it bows out, they'll see where it is and they'll adjust. I don't like to do anything in the day of the pour. I like to have it perfectly set up. I don't want to mess with anything like that. I want to place the concrete and I want to finish the concrete. I don't want to do anything else. There's just too much going on in a day, too much stress to deal with that kind of stuff. So I always like to make sure I spend a little bit more time beforehand, and then that way, even if it takes an hour more now and it only takes 15 minutes away from the pour day, that's worth it to me. So you can see over here, in the middle, in between these two boards, this is a 2x8 and this is a 2x4. In the middle, we just sort of fill it in with whatever we have, and then the plastic will hold the concrete in. But you can see over here, we got almost 4 inches of gravel on the bottom, and that holds in the bottom. That's where the most pressure is going to be. It's going to be putting pressure outward on the bottom. So you definitely want to make sure you have that in place. If it happens to move a little bit, it's not a big deal, because only the first 6 inches will be exposed, so you'll never see it. But the problem is you can run out of concrete if you do it too much. If you have a set amount, obviously you always order a little bit more, but with these monolithic pours, you can't really calculate exactly what you need. So it's good to have every little bit that you need, just in case. So that's why I don't want these bowing out on the bottom. The top's not going to bow out because I got these wailers in, and we do quite a bit of concrete walls, so I always use wailers on those, and you usually use a double wailer on that. But on this, we'll just use a single, and then you just attach these braces to the wailers. That makes it nice and easy. Keep it underneath so that you can screed it if you need to. Most of the time I just wet screed, but you can friction screed too off the top of this form if you need to, because everything's below that. So this system works out extremely well. I've used it a lot. I've tried many different other ways. This is definitely, it takes a little bit more time, but it's the best way that I found to do this. So you can look down this, you can see that this is perfectly straight and it's perfectly level. And if you have to adjust anything, it's not really a big deal. See, that's the thing about when you use these regular stakes and you just put them on the side of the form. As you're driving that stake in, you hit a little rock and it goes to the side. And now you're ½ inch, 3/4, or an inch off. So there's no need for that. I put these way back here, and that way if something needs to be adjusted, I just take this screw out and I move it, and sometimes I'll rotate this a little bit so you get the other hole in it, and then you just reattach it, no problem. So if you weren't using these wailers on the top, you'd want to be at least every 4 feet with these. We went about every 5 feet, every 5 to 6 feet. 6 feet on those ones, every 5 feet on this one. So that works out really well. This gravel is number 1, so it requires the least amount of compaction. If you use pea gravel, it's actually even better. But so the bigger the rock, the more compaction it's going to need. But this doesn't really need much. So, and what I like to do is on the last load that I need, I'll get the number 1s or pea gravel, and that way any little spots that you need to fill in, that you check with the laser, you can kind of fine tune it without going crazy and putting these big stones in here. So this is all number 2 stone, except for where we just needed to feather in, like right here, right there, around the outsides, right here. This is all number 1 stone, just to feather it out a little bit more precise. So I always use number 2 stone for under slabs, and I know a lot of people are not going to agree with that. Some people will say that you need to use item 4 or something with fines in it to be able to pack it in more. I don't agree with that. This stone allows for the water to expand underneath the slab without heaving. So in other words, there's lots of space in between these rocks even when you compact it. We went over this many times with the compactor. So this is it. What it does is it turns the rocks on the top flat, on their flattest side, so it makes a nice surface, but underneath of it, it's porous, so there's lots of room for expansion, and they call it elasticity. So when the water is underneath, like the moisture coming up from the ground, it can freeze, but it freezes in between the spots, in between the spaces on the stone. So what that does is it allows it to freeze without it heaving things. So now if you have item 4 in there, item 4 is packed so tight that if you get a little bit of moisture in there and it freezes, it's going to start pushing things. So that's the reason I use number 2 stone. It also allows for much better drainage. So if you have water problems, you can keep the water at bay more. You keep things drier with using number 2 stone versus item 4 or crusher run or anything else like that that has fines in it. So that's the way I've always done it. I've done a lot of research on it. That's the way that I believe is the right way, and for many different reasons. So we're ready to put the vapor barrier on, put the foam in, put the rebar in, the mesh, and then we're ready to go. All right. All right, I want you to just, I'm just gonna get a nice little wet pad here. If I'm a little bit low, just go ahead and, yeah, keep bunching it up there. Over here too.
Over there?
Right there.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a little bit low right here. Yeah, I think so. Looks pretty good.
That's so nice.
Yeah. Can you bunch it up right there, Pat? pull back a little bit from this side. It's dragging a little bit too hard. All right, so the last thing I did is I put some control joints in here. Usually you want them every 10 feet, but I put them every 12 feet on this just to be symmetrical. So there's 12-foot cubes in here and it works out evenly. If this was an area where you were gonna have a lot of weight on it, like a garage that you were using really heavy duty trucks, you'd probably want to stay within every 10 feet. But this will be fine. This is just, there's not going to be any heavy traffic in here. So I put this 2-inch foam around the outside. You normally want to use that anytime you're doing a monolithic pour. One more thing I wanted to address, because I know a lot of people are going to ask this question. I didn't put anchor bolts in this, and I never do. From the time I started my business about 14 years ago, I have never wet set any J-bolts ever. The reason I never set J-bolts is because I think it's a thing of the past, to be honest with you. When I build, I know how long it takes to mark the bottom of the sill plate for all the J-bolts that you already have pre-installed. And it doesn't take forever, but here's the thing. Between doing that and also possibly not having a J-bolt in the right place and you need to put a stud in there or something, or a jack, it's just not worth the aggravation of putting in J-bolts. By the time you spend the time to put the J-bolts in and then finish around them to be a little bit nice, even though there's going to be a sill plate there, after that, when you start building, when the builder starts building, which in this case is not me, they have to mark out the bottom of the sill plates and then drill the holes, and they have to kind of oversize them because you never get the measurements exactly right. It's just not worth the hassle. So what I always do is use wedge anchors. And the reason is because I can just take the sill plate, I can slap it on there, I can get it lined up with a string, get them all measured out, and then I can go afterwards and just take a rotary hammer and just drill through the board and into the concrete, take a vacuum with a small pipe attached to it, and get all the debris out of the hole, and then I set my wedge anchors. And it takes less time to do that than it would to bother with finishing after you put the J-bolts in, putting the J-bolts in, as well as marking the bottom of the sill plate, as well as having a problem with possibly a stud needing to be where a bolt is. It's just not worth the effort. J-bolts, in my opinion, are kind of an old school way to go. Now, I know you think of the design of a J-bolt and you think, well, that's much stronger than a wedge anchor, but that's simply not true. If you do some research on it, you can see that J-bolts, they pull out. They really do. I'm not going to say that a J-bolt is less strong than a wedge anchor. I don't know the exact technicalities about it, but I can tell you that they're very comparable. And I can tell you that there's no downfall in using a wedge anchor. And to top it off, what I usually do when I put wedge anchors in is I also put some epoxy on the wedge anchor. So that's the way I do it. I know a lot of people are going to disagree. I know a lot of people are going to ask me questions about it. That's the way I do it because I'm a builder. In my opinion, from the perspective of a builder, if I was to hire somebody to put in a slab or foundation, I would not want them to put in J-bolts. It's just extra work. There's no need for it. Once they set the sill plates on this, it's going to take literally a half an hour to drill out and put these wedge anchors in. It's just not that big of a deal. So in my opinion, you save time by doing that. So that's what I would prefer. So I do it for everybody else too. And I always make mention of that before I do the work. And I've never had anybody that had a problem with it. I've also done a lot of slabs where I have not put in these expansion joints, and I've never seen a crack on any of them. I've never got a call back from that. I prefer to put them in just because it's better insurance for me, but I don't think that they're totally necessary. So this is ready to build, and I told the customers they can start building. Usually you're supposed to wait like 30 days before you can start building, but really in my opinion, that's just not necessary, because you're going to be dealing with the walls for quite a while before you even get onto the roof. So I told the customers, if they wait like a week and a half, 2 weeks to start the walls, by the time they get done with the walls, it'll be 30 days, and this slab will reach its full strength, and then they can start putting on the roof. So I think the next couple things that I'm going to work on improving on the next slab is I'm going to purchase a bump cutter, and I'm also going to get a pizza pan for my power trowel. I didn't really know a lot about the pizza pan, but I actually watched a guy that's not too far from here in Albany, Tri-County Masonry and Excavation, and he uses a pizza pan, and I really like that idea, so I think I'm going to go ahead and try that too. And I'll show you guys that on the next video. So he actually does a pretty good job on concrete if you guys want to watch him. He's pretty low on subscribers right now, so any support that any of you guys could give to him, that'd be good. I think I've watched quite a few of his videos, and he does a pretty good job. And also there's another guy, if you guys want to watch some concrete videos, his name is Mike Day. Mike Day, everything about concrete. If you watch his videos, he does things very similar to how I do it, so I was very glad to see that.